people who wait for a filmmaking career will never have one. Without, of course, naming any names, can you think of some people in your life who are very talented, but have been waiting, and maybe it frustrates you, maybe you see the opportunity in front of them, but they won't take it for whatever reason?
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly colleagues. I won't even say friends, but just people that you run into. But what I've come to realize is that particularly those filmmakers that come out of film school, like you're not going to have a crew of 30 on your next film. You know, they come out with these great thesis films and they want to get their feature made. But in this age of independent filmmaking, no one's going to give you $1 million to do your thesis film. And when I don't see them working or trying to kind of start from scratch, whether it's a short film, whatever it is, to continue to do the craft until you get that. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm really blown away by filmmakers I know that have a great thesis film from film school and are waiting to make their feature film. I'm like, why aren't you doing something now? You know, I don't want to shoot something on my phone. I don't want to shoot something with a 3-person crew. I'm like, what are you waiting for? But it's not it's not something I can tell people. They have to figure that out on their own. But if you've been 10 years now, and I know filmmakers that are 10 years out of film school, still thinking they're going to get $3 million to produce their first film based off their thesis.
What do you think that is? Is it that they think that they're at a different status level? They don't need to do that. They want people to, they want to have investors?
I think it's a combination of that. And also it's a combination of people in this industry. I think everyone looks at their trajectory going like this, you know, and it doesn't. You started with a thesis and you have a crew of 30 and you have all this millions of dollars worth of equipment that the school provides for you. You get out. Do you really want to shoot your short film on your iPhone? The ones that work do, you know, but the ones that, because that's ego, you know, and in my experience, having done as much as I've done, what I've found is there's certain film schools, and I've hired film school students, you know, but the one I won't say the ones where they have the least discipline, but the ones with the most discipline have come from the Los Angeles Film School. They have come with a discipline to work, and it didn't matter how good their thesis film was. If my crew was smaller, whatever, they wanted to work, they wanted to learn, and they wanted to produce.
I know there's a lot of backlash on millennials that, oh, they don't want to work and things like that. I haven't always seen that. I've seen it can be across many different, you know, Generation X. I've seen different work ethics. Do you think is it generational, or is it a mindset?
It's definitely a mindset. I don't find it generational at all. If this is what you want to do, you're going to do it. And you're going to do it as often as you possibly can. The thing I say to people who want to be writers, you got to be writing every day. If you want to be a director or a filmmaker, you should be trying to make something or shoot something every month, every week if you can, but at least every month. You know, it's a craft. It's like building a deck, right? Your first deck you build is not going to maybe be as fancy or as good, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. And filmmaking is no different. So I don't really subscribe to that philosophy as, well, I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for the right money. I'm waiting for the right people. No, I'm not a subscriber to that. You have to just kind of go forward. If that's all you're banking on, though, is that all you have is your one script that you want to make perfect, you're going to have a difficult time.
Do you think the DIY mindset, because there's certain people that are just like really self-generate, like they rely on themselves.
Absolutely.
They don't expect any handout and they just want to do something themselves. Whereas there's others that maybe they've had more coddling or whatever it is. Do you think that there's a clash? Do you think they clash sometimes, those two mindsets?
Only on a panel. Yeah, because to me, it just comes down to the work. Can you produce? You know, so it can, to that sense. I think there are certain filmmakers we follow and we see their career and we try to model. I think filmmakers try to model their careers after other filmmakers. That's not something I've ever done. I've never looked at someone and said, this is how I'm going to do it like they did, you know, or I'm going to do this and this is what's going to happen. My thing has always just been, how do I get my stuff made right now? You know, and if I wrote a $10 million script, I would have it, but that wouldn't be the first thing I would try to get made. I would have a $50,000 script. I would have a $10,000 script. I'd have different things. What do I have? What can I do right now? And then if that does take, what do I have back here that's ready to go?
While we were setting up, you said you had a couple friends that were always calling you for filmmaking advice or whatever, which prompted an idea.
Yeah, they both, it was in the same week. They were calling me up, saying, hey, can you meet me so we could talk about some things? I'm doing my film and I need some advice. I said, sure, man. So I would always usually just try to give advice based on a story or an experience. Not necessarily this is what you have to do, because every film is going to be different. And in that week, these two friends of mine were like, you really should write a book about all your experiences, man. You've done a lot. And I was in a place back then where I'm like, yeah, I've done a lot, but I'm not where I want to be. So who's going to listen? Who's going to care? And they're like, well, we would care. He's like, there's a lot of people that you would inspire just knowing that you're still doing it, even though you're not at that place that you want to be at, but that you still continue to work. And you always have a lot of experience. So why not put it into a book form? And I said, well, we'll see. And then, so I kind of played with the idea for a little while. And then about 3 years ago, I got with a writing group and started sharing some chapters with them. And they really encouraged me to keep pursuing it, because it is quite a journey. I'm not a connected guy. I'm not a Hollywood guy. I grew up in Wilmington. It wasn't a place that bred great artists. There was nothing really inspiring around me. I just loved movies, and I thought I wanted to be an actor, but I found that I was a director. And so when I made that change, nothing happened for me as an actor. But as soon as I made that change to be a director, things started happening. So yeah, that's kind of the long answer. But yeah, I started writing a book called Stereotypical, my filmmaking journey from the harbor to Hollywood. And it should be out in October. And hopefully people will get a value from it.
When those two friends sort of threw that idea out there, where do you start? Because I'm sure, we all see our life in one way, and other people can see it from another and think it's either really interesting or whatever. How do you
Well, I had initially started at the theater academy that I met my wife at, because that's when I first started directing. You had to take a directing class there. And my attitude was so against it. I didn't want to direct a play. I was there to act, right? And I found, we had to do this project for the directing class. I just half-assed. And I found the letter for my grade on that the teacher wrote to me. It was basically saying, you show the most promise of any person in this classroom as a director. But you haven't done the work. I can't give you, a grade other than this. But I'm really disappointed. You think and talk and speak like a director. And I was insulted by the thing. I'm an actor. And so I ran into that teacher on a few occasions, and, I'm obviously directing a lot more now. So, and I don't act at all in my stuff for the most part. I'll have a cameo here and there. But that's where I started. And then, it's weird when you start writing something that personal, it triggers other memories. And then I remembered producing something when I was 7 years old, in my garage. It was a show for the kids in the neighborhood. And so that's where I started the book, with how that came about. That was the first time I had produced anything. And I was in it, and the trials and tribulations of that, of acts quitting and then coming in at the last minute, and I had to do everything. But it happened. I actually produced a little show like The Little Rascals. That was my inspiration, The Little Rascals. They had such a can-do attitude about anything. They had their own fire department. You know what I mean? So it was things like that. It was that kind of spirit to it. And I try to keep that spirit in when I'm up against some great odds and producing something.
Where do you go to write these chapters? Are you writing at home?
I used to go to the Aroma Cafe in Studio City. The reason that place was important to me was when I moved from Wilmington to Studio City, I was paying $400 a month for a studio on that street on Tujunga. And I would get home late night bartending. I'd walk my dog at 1:30 in the morning, which you couldn't do in Wilmington where I grew up. And that little cafe was there, and I would go there to write. And there was a sense that I had made it already. I was out of Wilmington, and I was living in Studio City, a place that was so Hollywood, it called itself Studio City. And I was writing, and at that point, I felt like I had made it. And so that place was that for a while, but now I kind of bounce around. We moved out of that area about 3 years ago. And so now I just bounce. Sometimes it's at home, it just depends. I carry a notebook with me. I'm always writing. So, and it's just translating my notes. But I will write pretty much anywhere I can. I'll take my laptop with me, or I'll have a notebook with me all the time, no matter what.
And when you started writing those chapters, did it reframe your life for you in any way? Did you look at yourself differently?
It helped me get out of the place I was in after doing my 7th film. And I was kind of wounded after my 7th film because I had stopped and started so many times even before that. And then nothing happened with that one. And so I was kind of like, why am I still drudging along? Which is what I felt like I was doing. And all the negative experiences of getting 7 feature films were kind of right here. Whoops, I don't mess up the mic, right here. And as I was writing the book and speaking of the experiences, the negative stuff was very small. It was all really fun and inspiring and a reminder to myself of why I was doing this. So the book was very cathartic for me in that sense. One of the chapters is on 2010. At the beginning of that year, my 4-year-old was hit by a car. And he survived. I always should stress that. He survived, and he's doing well. He's 14 now. But that's how my year started, and it ended with me losing my house. So, and in that time, I released my 3rd feature film, but 2 films that I was counting on, the financing fell through, and that's why I lost my house, because I was counting on those 2 films. And I had gambled pretty big. And I thought I was gonna lose my family at that time, but luckily the wife was very supportive even in that time.
Again, just setting up, I just jokingly said something that you said should be on a t-shirt, and that is, call me when you make your second film.
Call me when you make your second, yeah. Someone does a first film, I'm like, okay, give me a call when you do your second film. Because if after your first film, you say, oh man, yeah, I got to go through that again, then you're a filmmaker, But I say that because in the films that I've done, a lot of my lead actors have gone off. A lot of my stuff's ensemble, right? So a few of my leads, almost all my leads of all my feature films had gone off to write and direct their own films because I had shown them how to pull the rabbit out of the hat for little money. Because at that time, no one thought you could make a movie for $50,000. And I was doing that, and I was getting them at Blockbuster. I was getting them on Redbox. I'm getting them on Netflix. So these actors would go off and use my connections to do their thing. And some of them did it right in the sense that they started their process. Some of them didn't do it so right, and they just copied my process. But none of them went off to make a second film. So I always have told actors in particular, and some of them had asked me to direct their thing. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Well, I really want to showcase my talent with this. I go, okay, that's not a reason. It's a vanity project. It's not something I'm interested in. I go, if there's nothing personal, then why are you going to do this? Because that's going to reek of vanity as soon as you put it out there. So, and most of them were, and they never went to go do a second one because it's a lot of, look, your audience knows, what it takes to make a feature film, right? And if you're just doing it to showcase your acting talent, that's a hard thing to motivate, to keep you motivated throughout the process, and then also after you get past releasing it and your friends and family are supportive, where is it now? Did it go on to get distribution? Did it go on to a festival that wasn't what I call a specialty film festival, where everybody involved and they want to support the film, and that's great. But not very few of them have gone to go do a second. Actually, none of them have gone on to do a second feature. And most of the people I know that thought they wanted to be filmmakers after the first one, that was it for them. And they're just like, I don't know how you did it. How do you do it raising your family and do it? I said, well, I enjoy both. I love making movies. I love being a family guy. I love being a husband. I love being a dad. So to me, it's not, I don't want to say the words hard because it is hard, but it's not labored.
And so you have a family, you have 2 children,
Mm-hmm.
and you also work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I
you're doing all
have been
of
on a
that.
dry spell, although I will say this month is the first month in a while I'm making more money as a writer director than I am in my job. And so that was a really good way to start August. So this is
That's
in August.
great.
Yeah. So, um, but yeah, I have to maintain my financial responsibilities to my family. But the job that I have allows me to do both. It allows me to keep pursuing I have a flexibility in that. And so I'm able to provide for my family and do that and pursue filmmaking. That's helped me keep my sanity.
Have you ever wanted to have a non-flexible job? Because I know there's always that bait, like, should I take this like more steady or not even steady paycheck, but
No, I'm not a 9-to-5 guy. I'm not a 9-to-5 guy. I knew that very early on. Yeah, I would have friends that would say, I don't know how you do it without the security of, retirement or healthcare. That luckily my wife's job, she has the healthcare, so we don't have to worry about that. But I said, there is no guarantees, man. I go, there are no guarantees. I go, I'm sure a lot of people that worked at a lot of these financial institutions that have gone down all thought they had security. There's no such thing as security. There's no security in being an artist, and somehow we pay the bills every month and still pursue. It's just having courage to do that. Most people don't. And I don't blame them, but you have to have that if you want to pursue your art.
and there's a lot of jobs in LA that are like these flexible jobs that actually pay a decent wage.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be, I think
Oh yeah,
people
there's
don't
all these
realize
micro economy. People make it work and make it hustle.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, I go, look, if you come to LA to pursue acting or filmmaking or whatever your passion is, if it's important to you, you find a way. If it's not, you'll find an excuse.
Do you regret not making films earlier in your career? Or do you think it all happened in the right time?
No, that's a hard one to answer because I feel like I'm not a believer of luck, but I am a believer in timing. And I will say I feel like my career has been a combination of being too early or too soon. I wish I was that guy that was making movies at 7 years old, so by the time I had gotten to 26, which was when I made my first film, I would already have been a skilled filmmaker. But I'm starting at 26, just learning. So in that sense, yes, but the trajectory of my personal life, I don't know would have been the same. When I was in high school, there was a huge omen. When I was in high school, there was a teacher there. I wasn't particularly good at anything at that point. 2 of my best friends had a cable access show, and I would help them with that. And the teacher told them, and I went to a predominantly affluent white private school. I didn't grow up there, but that's where I went to school. So one of their counselors said, USC is doing this thing, this film school introduction. Do you guys want to go? And they're like, yeah, Ken, you want to go with us? I go, yeah, I'll go with you guys. So we all went together, and the odd thing was, like, these were 2 white guys. I was the only Latino pretty much in the school. And we go to this USC thing, and it turns out it was for Latino students. So it was the first time they were the only 2 white guys in this entire group. And then I was there, and there was a huge, the universe telling me, go to USC Film School or do something this way. And I just wasn't in the right frame mind. I was a very angry and insecure person at that time. And but I look back on that, and I tell that story in the book too, that there was a huge thing right there. And we had to get into groups and do pitches, and I was just in my element. And my 2 buddies were like, man, we didn't know you even had ideas and all this. And this. I go, I didn't know either, man. I just felt I felt like I had a community, and I was being validated, and I was never in search of that, but there it was. But I was just too, like I said, I was in a very negative space in high school throughout the duration, so I just wasn't open to it. But had I done that, I would have met my wife. And that was, that's the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. I haven't had no luck in film. Everything's been through hard work and just sheer will. But meeting my wife was pure luck, and having that happen. So I don't have regrets in that sense. Do I wish I had more experience going to my first film? Yes, but I don't know that I would have had the same journey, and I look back on my journey, especially writing the book, and I'm really kind of proud of it.
Do you ever feel thankful for the anger you said you had in high school, because that prompted you to want to tell really powerful stories that aren't vanity projects?
No, because it wasn't. High school was very, how do I say? It was like a non-creative time in my life. It just was, it's not something I'll even look back fondly. It wasn't until I got to the theater academy, which was a year after I graduated high school, and I went to this acting academy where I was able to just break myself down. And it was all for acting, but it helped me rebuild myself and be somebody who was creative and who had things to say. So that anger outside of high school turned into, I'm not happy. How do I change this? Let me try this. And then to go to an acting academy where you're the normal one, you know what I mean? So that was, but I was just so inspired by everybody there because everyone was so brave. There were people there who were broke, pursuing their dream. And so that place was such a great place for me creatively to learn the language of acting, which helped me with actors to this day. I mean, I'm proud to say I'm an actor's director. I get that comment from the actors I work with all the time. They all say, you just speak our language. And that's because I know the language. I went to an acting academy. I'm a classically trained actor who doesn't act. I make movies, but I know how to speak with them. And I think going back to an earlier question, you said that's the advantage I think I have over film school students who don't learn that, because to me, it's the art of communication. You can have this vision, you could have this talent, but if you can't communicate it, you got to be able to communicate it to your crew and to your cast. That's my talent. When you have 2 kids that have asked you a million questions a day growing up, I don't have all those answers, but on set, I have every answer.
When that acting teacher gave you that note, or wherever they gave you that grade and said you would make a great director out of anybody in this class, and you said you were hurt by it or offended.
Well, I was just so no, I'm an actor, I'm not a director. I took it like a negative. Again, there was a second time the universe is telling me, hey, Ken, look, you're a director, you're not an actor, and me ignoring that. And it wasn't till I got out of the academy and me and the wife were going out on things that were very uninspiring, and there weren't a lot of Latinos producing anything or writing anything, or even there weren't that many of us in terms of actors. So we're like, what do? We just went to school for this. We started writing, directing, and producing our own plays. And that was out of necessity, but I was starting to enjoy directing more than I was being on the stage. Because directing, my instincts were just very fluid, and I knew exactly what to do and when to do it. I knew how to communicate something. I knew how to block something. When I was an actor, I was constantly judging. Is this genuine? Is this authentic? Is this? I didn't know how to get there as an actor. But I knew how to get other actors there.
Can you just give us some practical tips on maybe you call it the actor's language or the director's language with actors?
For me, it starts with trust, and it starts with the audition process. I don't use casting directors. I've done 7 feature films, never used a casting director. I do not find the casting process brings out the best. I think it rewards good auditioners, but not good actors, because they're 2 different things, right? There are actors that are good auditioners, and there are actors that are good actors, that are terrible auditioners. My process eliminates that. Because someone could blow an audition, but if I see something, if I see their humanity, and I don't mean them struggling with being nervous, I mean just there's something deeper that they want to express and they can't do it in the 2 or 3 pages, I will bring them back for a callback, and I will put actors together and see how much they give each other. And that's normally how I will work an audition, especially in a callback. I run it like an acting workshop. I let the actors play, and then I want to see who can take direction. But essentially, I'm trying to get who they are, and it's just part of it is just instinct. And my business has always been people, so and having the intuition to go, this is going to work with this, and getting them to talk to each other, play tennis with each other, back and forth. Because then, if you have an actor comes in fully prepared and they kill the audition, and then I put them in a scene with somebody and they're doing the exact same thing they did in the audition, then I know that's all they're going to give me. And that's not enough. There has to be more. I try to make the actor feel comfortable and confident embodying the character by using their own emotional experience.
What's the difference between having a big ego and a strong ego as a director?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, having a big ego comes from insecurity, right? Having a strong ego is being confident in what you're doing, but you have to beat people over the head with it. One thing I said with my latest film is I'm not trying to beat people over the head with my film. I'm trying to break their heart with it. And it really comes down to approach, but it really essentially is about, it's like a fine line between arrogance and confidence, right? And people know the difference, but the problem is directors are fed that ego on set, whether they know what they're doing or whether they don't. They're fed that because people just assume that they know what they're doing. But for me, I don't like to manipulate actors. I don't feel I need to manipulate actors. I don't need to cause havoc between two people to get a performance, because the audience knows only what I show them right here. They don't know all this. They don't need to know all that. So to me, confidence is not even the right word. If there was a better word for confidence, I would just say being able to communicate your vision in a very clear and concise way. If you know how to do that, you don't need to, be that guy that is flamboyant. But a director to director is one thing. An actor to a director, they're never going to call a director on that. You know what I'm saying? Whether he's arrogant or confident, a director's never going to get called out on that, on a professional set. Everyone assumes that they're there because they're supposed to be there. So you have this kind of advantage. But where it really starts to boil down is how you communicate with the actors. And when my crew starts to engage with what we're shooting and they're not just doing a job, then I know we have something. I always go by the crew because they see a million things, right? They see a million movies. They're on sets a million times. But if I see them engaging and watching the actor's performance, then I like, okay, well, we got something. The crew's interested. Like, oh, we have something here. And they're trying to make it better. They're trying to take it just to make it a little bit better, But that is essentially it. I tell every filmmaker I meet, I go, there's 3 tenets I live by, and I form them by watching other directors that didn't go on to do anything. And one is, don't let your ego be bigger than your career. Don't make promises you can't keep, especially to cast and crew. And the last one is, when it's all said and done, let more be said than done. Lead by example. You can't, especially in the social media age, a lot of people can post anything about it. Everyone's a producer, everybody's this or that or the other. But when you look beyond it, is the work there? That's what I always tell people. Don't look at the surface, look deeper. Don't be so fooled so easily. You can tell the people. Someone asked me recently, this guy's a producer. And I said, if he's a producer, then what has he produced? He's like, well, I don't want to ask him that. It would be insulting him. I go, why is that insulting him? I go, you're only insulting him if he doesn't have anything. Right. I go, then I go, I know it feels good to have someone go, I want to help you. I'm a producer. I know that feels good, but don't be fooled by that. Just ask them, okay, what have you done? I go, we get asked that question all the time. When I tell someone I'm a filmmaker, what have you done? Well, I've done this, this, and this. Where can I watch it? You can watch it here, here, and here. Oh, okay. But if someone says they're a producer and you go, what have you produced? And they get upset and they get their ego damaged, that's because they haven't done anything. So don't be fooled by that.
What if we took it a step back and we see the difference between ego and sort of a strong sense of self in even wanting to be a filmmaker?
Well, I mean, look, you have to have, there's a certain amount of narcissism you have to have, to me it's about controlling that. Because and there's a certain amount of maybe even arrogance to say, I'm going to make something that people are going to care about. So you have to have just a tiny bit of that. But more so than that, what I say is it's more of a naivety. And I think that having the naivety doing your first film is a strength. It's not a weakness, because you don't know what you're up against. And that's a good thing, because if you knew that, maybe you would never get started. And maybe that would save you a bunch of time, heartache, and money. But if this is what you want to do and you don't know what's ahead of you and you don't know what's involved, that will drive you to the end of your film, at least your first film. And then when you get to the end of it, you may be like, wow, I'm not going to do that again. Or you're going to be like, I can't wait to do that again. Regardless of where it goes, if it went to Sundance or it got distribution, regardless, if your attitude after that is, man, that was hard as hell, but that was awesome, I got to do that again, then A, there's something wrong with you, and B, you're a filmmaker, and go, go.
Right. And it's okay to have it be something wrong with you, because that's what it,
Oh,
it's okay. There's like degrees. They say, well, artists are crazy or selfish or whatever, but there's degrees in it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be totally negative in that sense. It means they want to create something.
I have a balance because, like I said, I have a family, and I'm one of the few. I'm one of the few people that I know that has a family and has done both. But that's the other question I get asked is, well, how do you do it? And I'll ask this: do you have a family? No. Do you have a job? No. I'm like, okay, you have no responsibility. You're asking me how to do it? You go do it. I go, do you have one of these? And I grab their phone. Go do it. If you want me to tell you how to make $1 million, you want me to tell you how to get into Sundance, you want me to tell you how to get in the theater, I don't know how to do those things. I go, but the fact that you're sitting there asking me, when you have time and energy and a cell phone, make something. Is it going to be great? Probably not your first time out, but that's part of it, man. Like, you got to do the crap to get to do some cool stuff. I've done 7 films, not all of them are great. But the ones that aren't great, that was my fault. No one's to blame except me on those ones, But every one of them is a learning experience, and every one feeds the next one.
Can you paint a picture of how much work it takes to be a filmmaker? For people watching this channel, maybe they're in that similar boat. They've gone to film school. They're waiting for this like magical producer to come along with this check.
Well, if you're doing your first film and you have a producer, you're lucky enough to have a producer, that's great. But you will be producing as well. Like, there's no getting around it. You're not going to be just directing. Let's assume you didn't write the script. Okay, let's say you partnered up with somebody. What you can expect is just an all-encompassing days of just prepping. And it's not a thing, get a camera and go shoot. I mean, it is a lot of preparation. And that is something that I think gets lost a lot. Like when I was doing Marigold, my 7th film, it would be 2 weeks of prep for 2 days of shooting. So it's making sure that you have the cast and crew, that you have the insurance, that you have the permits, that you have everything. And sometimes the person the only one that's going to care the most about it is going to be you, unless you have an incredible budget where you're able to pay people to care, right? You're the one that's caring the most, and you can't drop the ball, and you have to be leading everything. You cannot be behind on anything, because as soon as they lose confidence in you, then your first day of shooting, it's going to be a disaster, and so that's the big thing you can expect. It's just a lot of prep before, depending on the requirements of your script and your story. But any little thing, if you want it to be done well, that you're going to have to put that time in. That's not necessarily directing.
Why would they lose confidence in you?
Because you can tell when someone doesn't know, when they don't have a clear vision about people will excuse you if you can't communicate your vision, but they will not excuse you if you don't have a vision, your cast and your crew, and that's the thing that I always tell, like, you have to have a very clear vision about what you want. If you don't know what you want, then you're in big trouble.
So is that something that you learn on your feet by going through it?
Yeah, I don't think that's something you could be taught. I think it's something that you have to learn by doing. And start small. Particularly if you're a woman or a person of color, you're not going to be given an opportunity to fail on a major thing. I've had several actors contact me on TV shows who know I'm trying to get into TV directing, and they're like beside themselves because some 27-year-old on set, never directed anything, doesn't know what he's doing, and yet he has an opportunity to do that. And it's usually a white male. We're not going to be given those opportunities. We need to know what we're doing the day we're on set. and in a lot of those instances, the DP is teaching them how to do their job. I like working with DPs because I learn from them. That was my film school, working with DPs. I've been fortunate to work with several different ones. And I learn lenses and I learn their language, and they love it. They love it because I can speak their language and I understand what size lens does and what it's used for, how to move the camera. Get to know everybody's job, costume, makeup, everybody. When you're first starting out, that's the advantage. You're going to have to do all that stuff anyway. It'll give you an appreciation for the people who do those things, but like hair and makeup people love me because I'm not going to have them go through 6 or 7 variations on someone's hair. I know exactly what I want. And they're like, oh my God, I love you. You know what you want. That's what I always get from hair and makeup. Oh my God, I love you. You know what you want. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to send you back 7 times for 7 different looks only to go back to the first thing I saw. I know right away. Boom, that's going to work. That's going to work. Let's go.
Sounds like having a clear vision is very important to you. That's kind of how you run your life, really.
Yes.
You're very you know what you want, and that's awesome. Does that translate into the stories you want to tell? You're very clear on what you want to tell.
I'm very clear on the emotions I'm trying to get my films to invoke in people. I'm very clear on that. And I'm about 90% clear on how to do that. My 4th film, I'm not even going to say the title. It's one of my most personal scripts, but the budget, I kept having to compromise. And there were great moments that I had to get rid of. And I didn't know on set, I didn't know how to make the adjustment. You're not going to get this, Ken. We can't afford it. Something that was promised to me during the shoot. So I was losing things during the shoot, and so that was hard. And so for that particular film, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, wow, we nailed it. Because I had to do that. I had that trailer cut at the very end of production because I was using that trailer to raise money for my next film. As soon as I got back, I had another meeting, and that producer was like so impressed that I had a trailer for her. And then she saw that. She's like, wait, you shot that in 3 weeks? I'm like, yeah. She's like, it was a 5-minute meeting. Boom, I had the movie. But the movie didn't do what the trailer did. The movie didn't do what the trailer promised. And the reason why was because I had to make compromises and I couldn't make the adjustment to still get the emotional impact of the film that I wanted. So in pieces, it works, but not as a whole. So in that instance, there was a clear vision, but I wasn't able to make the adjustment. I wasn't able to, and for all my other films, I was able to do that. I was able for them to say, so Ken, this scene, we can't do it the way you want to do it. You have to do something else. Okay, fine. I want to keep the emotion that this scene brings. Let me switch it. Let me fix it. Let me use what we have. I was able to do that very quickly. For that film, for whatever reason, I just wasn't able to. And I think because I was doing too much with so little. And at your 4th film, that's very hard. If it was my first film, it's easy. The ideas start coming. But your 4th film, you're very specific, right? I want this, and there's no compromise. And then you're compromising constantly on a daily basis. And you're just like, the heart of that film got gutted. But yeah, it is. You have to. I think one of my improv teachers at the academy said, he's like, he was the one that taught me. He's like, you always have a clear vision about what you want, because you will subconsciously make decisions that will lead you to those goals. And he's been right for a very long time. So he's like, doesn't mean it's going to happen when you want it to happen, but things will start to happen. And I've had a lot of full circle moments like that, and that have given me, where I would run into a director would help that I admired, help me with something. And I'm like, I never thought I would even meet this person. And now we have emails and he's telling me, no, keep going, man, do your thing. Or meeting an actor or working with an actor that I grew up watching, like writing a script saying, this is the actor I want. We're never going to get him, but this is the actor I want. Putting it out there and knowing very clearly that's who I want, not knowing how you're going to get there. And then you get there. Those little miracles are so important in filmmaking. It doesn't mean though your film is special. It just has to happen for it to be made. Independent filmmaking, you need those miracles. And they happen, but you can't get too impressed by them. And when you do your first film, you do, right? You're like, we weren't going to get this location. We got it for free. We must be going to Sundance. This film's on its way. And it was like, but no, those things happen just from planning and putting it out there. Hopefully we can do this. Hopefully we can do that. Well, let's aim for it. And more times than not, those things have come to fruition.
So you said your fourth film was very personal to you, and you feel like for budgetary reasons or whatever, it was shortchanged. Do you ever see yourself redoing it then?
Yeah, I do actually. I would have to change it up a little bit because the distributor owns that movie. They haven't done much with it. I think it got into Target and Walmart, and that was the extent of it. I know they're trying to get all my films onto Netflix right now. So I think I could revisit that, but I don't know. When I made that movie at that time, that's how I was feeling. I was feeling like the main character at that time. He was in a rock and a hard place and didn't know how to get out of it. And only had very little to rely on but himself.
Even when you want to quit being a filmmaker, you can't?
No, and I've wanted to several times. The thing is to have such a discipline that even when you want to quit, you're still working. To give you an example, I'll get a rejection, right? That I was expecting to get something, whether it was in a film festival or get into some type of program or hear from the showrunner about a possible directing gig. And I just get the email that says no, right? Doesn't matter how nice it is, it's a no. And you're just like, how many of these can I take? That's it, I'm done. And there I am writing my next script. There I am producing my next thing. It doesn't stop. You know what I mean? So I've said that a bunch of times. And the wife always says, she's like, you telling me you quit, but then the next breath you're talking about the next thing you want to shoot. She's like, I get it. She's like, but you're not going to quit. So why do you tell yourself you're going to quit? I go, I just need 24 hours to get over my rejection and then I'm back at it. But the point is to always be working. If you're just writing a treatment, if you're just writing a short story, and here's the thing, I don't even consider myself more of a director than a writer, but I'm probably the most disciplined as a writer, because it's initial, I can get the story out. If I have a story to tell, I can't just pick up a crew and the cast and go and tell that story, but I can sit at my typewriter or my laptop, and I can type it out and I can start to see it and get excited about it. And do I know how I'm going to get it made? No, but at least it's out. And then I have another one, and then I have another one. So I'm probably the most disciplined at writing because it's going to happen. It happens every day. It happens wherever I'm at. I have a notebook or my laptop. If I'm working on my book or my pilot or my script, my feature or my featurette, or I'm trying to finish my featurette that I'm producing and directing, the discipline is it doesn't matter that I tell myself I'm going to quit. My body and my mind are still working. I think it comes to how a marathon runner is just on automatic on those last 3 or 4 miles. Like their body is telling them, no, we're done, but they still find whatever that is to keep going. That's how I can equate playing the long game and pursuing this craft.
Where do you find the ideas for your stories?
I would say a lot of my stuff goes into like kind of the complicated, like a mentor-mentee relationship or the brother relationship, brother's relationship. Those dynamics have always been a part of my life, partly because I never had a big brother, I didn't have a mentor. So I'm always investigating those things. All the female characters in all of my movies are all very strong female characters before it became a thing to put a strong female character in.
Yeah.
Because the muse comes from one, and that's my wife. So every female character comes from her, so they're going to have those traits. And so usually how the story, and I'm an urban director, I'm in the urban genre. I make no apologies for that. I love the urban genre. That's what I grew up watching as a kid. It's what I still continue watching. I love gangster films. My stuff though comes from a place of authenticity and genuineness, and also from an emotional place. I always say I go behind the headlines. So like for my first 3 films, I called them the Drive-By Chronicles. And I took them directly from a headline from a drive-by shooting somewhere. And then I created a story of that, because we don't get that. We get the headline, but we don't know how that family has reacted to that. We don't know how they're dealing with that. We don't know the repercussions in the neighborhood of how they're dealing with that. There are so many different aspects, compelling storytelling. And as a Latino filmmaker, I sometimes get shit for that. But my thing is, if you haven't watched my films, you can't judge me just based on the genre I choose to tell my stories. If you've watched them and you come across that with that, I'll even question you then, because I'm the writer and I know what's going to be phony or cliche or stereotypical. And the genre itself isn't. It's how you approach the characters. And I couldn't get the actors that I get if my stuff was stereotypical, because they're not getting paid a ton of money to be there. They're doing it because they responded to the script. So that's where most of my stuff comes from. I just love LA. I'm inspired by LA and where I live and the people that I've been around. I'm inspired by the people that struggle to just get up in the morning, provide for their family, and go to bed with some sense of accomplishment for the day or some fulfillment with whatever it is that they're trying to do. I don't know, I'm more blue collar that way. I'm considering myself a blue collar filmmaker because I didn't go to film school. I didn't learn that way. I didn't go to a fancy college to learn writing. It's interesting, there's a lot of showrunners now that are working on these urban shows they got writing gigs straight out of college. I'm like, how do you even know this world? And for your average audience, it's enough, but not for me. Which might be why they're saying no to having me direct, because they take a look at my reel and they're like, oh, this guy's doing it for real. We don't want him around here. But, because that's been the kind of the backlash I get. But it also just depends on a lot of times it's people's perception, right? And you can do nothing about that. I just can write, direct, and tell the stories that I want to tell in the way that I want to tell them. And if people dig it, then cool. If they don't, nothing I can do about that.
So sorry, I'm having trouble figuring out, why would they give you backlash? If you know a neighborhood or you want to delve deeper into a headline, what would be the problem with that?
Well, I'll put it this way. Let's say you have a job as a mechanic and you're a decent mechanic. You know enough about cars to be a mechanic, and you're put in charge of hiring another mechanic. Are you going to hire a mechanic who knows more than you when they can only have two?
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
You're not going to hire that guy. You don't want that guy in your garage. He's going to take your job.
Right.
And that's probably wise, because I'm not a writer to be in a writer's room. I see myself running a show. I see myself directing shows. I see myself getting my own shows done. So I think for now, with the no's I've gotten from people, that's what my wife says, and she doesn't feed my ego or anything. She's like, why are they going to you're doing it for real. You got real people. I work with a lot of ex-gang members. She's like, who are really good actors. It's not just having ex-gang members to authenticate your work. Can they act? Because I'm seeing a lot of that now too. I'm like, okay, that's great. He spent this many years in jail, but he can't act. But Hollywood doesn't care. They think that, well, we got him and he has a great story and we're going to sell that. That's what I'm seeing a lot of in TV right now. And I'm kind of like, there's such a lack of authenticity. And when there's a lack of authenticity is when they constantly are saying how authentic the show is.
Oh, that was my next question. What are some of the red flags? When you see
Red
something
flag.
and it's an urban genre and then you go, wait a minute, I can tell this is written by someone who lived on a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And had a swimming pool.
Yeah,
like what?
That's absolutely correct. I think that's the biggest red flag for me is when they start talking about how authentic it is. Or they start talking about everything except the stories that they're trying to tell. Because if it is, you get engaged in the storytelling. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters, and particularly in my community, like that's all that's talked about now. I love Ava DuVernay. She's someone I look up to because she did a Q&A recently, and she had on the director of a film called Gook. And she's like, I'm not going to talk about all the social and all the being an Asian American filmmaker. Let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about the craft of telling the story. And that's not that, because you're a person of color, it's like you have to talk about some type of issue when I'm a filmmaker. It doesn't mean I don't have an opinion about things that are happening in today's world, but they're gonna creep up in my films, and they're gonna creep up in genuine and in more subtle ways. I'm not gonna promote my stuff by a message. Just not gonna do that. I've seen filmmakers do that. First of all, it doesn't work. And second of all, it's a cheap way of promoting yourself.
Let's say someone has a great story idea. What do they do next?
Well, there's a lot of things they can do. I get people that come up to me with story ideas all the time, and I say, well, write it. You know, they have an idea and they think that's enough, and that's not enough. If you have an idea and you manage to make it into a story and then turn that story into a script, now you have something. And then you say, well, yeah, but my script is so big, it's $10 million budget, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, what can you shoot from it that isn't gonna cost you $10 million? That's what I'm doing right now. You know, a script I wrote, been writing for 10 years that I wanna get made. I finally just said, I gotta shoot something from this. The script's done, it is done, it's ready to go. I'm not gonna get money to do this because they're not gonna understand it. Unless I get some type of angel donor, no studio is gonna understand what I'm trying to do here. I'm not Guaron, you know, I'm not him. They're not gonna take a chance on this project. But what can I do to help them understand what it is? Well, there's 3 scenes I can shoot that are gonna cost me very little money. And that's what I do. So that's what I'm doing right now. There are no rules. Like now is like the Old West in terms of independent filmmaking. Is it harder to get something on the theater? Absolutely. But to get something made, it is not hard. To get it seen and shown, it's not hard. Now, to get on Netflix, that's gonna be a little bit harder, absolutely. But it's not impossible. You know what I mean? It's not a rich man's game anymore. You're only confined by the things that you put in front of yourself, you know? So I always tell people, like, shoot something from it or write something smaller. You know, don't think your big idea is gonna be the first thing out. I got a friend right now that it's gotta be 12, 13 years. And it's like, is it a great idea? Yeah, it's the time now, yeah. But nobody's gonna trust you with a $40 million budget to do your passion project, essentially. Because they're gonna ask, what have you been doing for 12 years? You've been having the same thing for 12 years. Do something, you should have been building up to that. Don't have one thing. You know, I'm not saying be a jack of all trades. I'm saying as a writer, have tiers. If you're a writer director, have tiers of things that you can do. If it's a 3-page short, that's fine. If you could tell a story beginning, middle, and end in 3 pages, that's a skill. You know, and now you have something. Put it out there. See what people say about it. It's always never relying on this kind of like ethereal thing that something is going to happen. It's always relying on your own 2 hands. Because then you have no expectations, right? You can do it and either people like it or don't like it, or it'll find the right spot. You don't know. There's so many, you can only control what you can do, not everything else. You know, I couldn't tell you how I was gonna get my first 3 films financed. You know, I didn't go about it the way that normal people do. You know, I took my short films and packaged them like a DVD you would buy at a video store. And I passed them out to all the local film festivals that rejected those films. And guess what? There was a distributor producer there. And he ended up financing my first 3 films.
Oh, wow.
So
that's a cool story. You
just have to find new ways. You know, I'm not a big proponent of crowdfunding. But if, you know, my thing is go get a job for 3 months and save up. You know, don't ask people to give you money for something that you don't even know if you're capable of pulling off.
And you said earlier that you feel like the first film that an indie filmmaker makes, whether it's through crowdfunding, a combination, family, friends, coworkers, that's easy.
Yes.
And then subsequent ones,
right.
Very, very tough. Why?
Very tough.
Why is that?
Well, if it's a double-edged sword. So let's say you've crowdfunded your first film, right? You got it, you're 22,000. 22,000 seems to be the magic number that everyone goes after, right? So you crowdfund, you do it. and everyone comes to the screening and they're all excited and they got their button and their t-shirt or whatever. And then nothing happens. Okay, nothing in the sense of it didn't go to Sundance or it didn't get distribution or it didn't do anything. So you start your next one, right? Now you have to make your second film that a lot of people are gonna be like, well, I gave you $100 last time to support you. I don't have that money to help you with this second one. You're gonna have to figure that out, or, that becomes, then it becomes about the crowdfunding, not about the storytelling, because the amount of work it takes just to crowdfund is unbelievable. And it's not something I enjoy at all, And to me, it's like, if you have 22,000, if that's what you're raising, a percentage of that's going to go to, the platform that you're using, plus a percentage of that's going to go to all the little things that you've promised people, whether they're buttons or coffee mugs or whatever. And then a lot of people notice you have to pay a tax on that because it's considered income, unless you're a nonprofit. But if you're making a movie, you want to make a profit. So then what do you have left over? And then if, let's say, you owe your rent the next month. I've seen that happen too many times. There was a 2-year period where me and my wife were donating $100 to projects that were being crowdfunded. And we did 20 in a 2-year period. So it's about $2,000 over 2 years. Out of those 20 projects, one of them was made. So I just stopped, and I get people all the time, hey, can you help us out? Can you help us out? I said, look, man, I wish you well. I'll be at your screening. I'll share whatever you wanted me to share, but I'm not giving money anymore. I got 2 kids and a wife, and I want to put them both through college, my 2 kids through college, so I go, but I wish you well, and then sure enough, they're like, you hear it every day on social media. Then as soon as the money is raised, you don't hear about the project anymore. I'm like, what happened to your project? Well, rent's due. That's the problem.
With this script that you'd been writing for 10 years, or did you write it for 10 years? Sorry, or did it take 10 years for you to get to this point?
It took 10 years for me to get to this point. Yeah.
Okay.
It took me about 3 or 4 years to write it. And it's my 10th script, yeah. My 10th screenplay.
And so when you said, I'm going to just do 3 scenes, is that it?
Yeah, I'm shooting 3 scenes that show the character from the womb to a 10-year-old to an 18-year-old.
Ah, so you're doing it in sequential order then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was what I was wondering is, how are you determining which scenes to shoot? So you're...
I'm showing his journey in little increments, and I'm hoping the audience is going to go, wow, what happened between here and here? What happened between here and there? Because in between those scenes, I have an incredible actor, Chicano icon actor that I've grown up watching, named Pepe Serna, and he plays what I'm calling the Chicano chorus. And I wrote it in iambic pentameter. So he's telling this Shakespearean story in between those vignettes to fill the audience in the blank. So it's very stylized, and I'm very happy with it. I have one of the vignettes left to shoot, but I'm editing it and I'm rewriting that last vignette because I haven't been completely happy with it. And they're not taken from the script. The story is, but the script, only one scene is actually word for word from the script. I had to modify the other ones to show some history and a little bit of that character's journey.
How do you know you have a great protagonist?
I don't ever. Yeah, don't ever. It's a chance, with first writing it and then bringing in the right actor. That was something that a lot of actors take for granted, is can they carry a movie? In an independent world, like there are no, you're looking for someone, you have to go off your instinct. Is this guy going to carry this movie? And are people going to be interested in this person throughout the entire hour and a half? That's something I don't take that for granted, because if they don't, the movie's done, and I've been fortunate that I've worked with actors that have moved on to bigger and better things, and that's been a validation for me, because when I cast them, they weren't SAG, they didn't have an agent, they were diamonds in the rough. So I'm always, my wife says, you're every actor's good luck charm. She's like, they always move on to bigger and better things. I'm like, that's great. But it's a validation of my casting process as well.
Where do you find your actors?
It'll be a variety of things. Actors Access, Breakthrough Services. I've done enough now where I'll ask other actors to refer actors. And that's been a really great thing because not every actor can play the part, right? I'll give you an example of where that happened. And Counterpunch was my 5th film. We were casting a grandmother, and I brought in an actor to be the uncle. And he says, I got a great actress that I've worked with in New York who would be great as the grandmother. And I go, who is she? She's Yvonne Cole. And I'm like, I'm not familiar with her. He's like, she's been in the business a long time, but she's going to be booking something very quickly. very big soon. She's like, but I think she'd be great. She was the first one I ended up casting in that film. And we brought her in and we read like almost a full year. Well, we initially had the initial funding. She came in for that table read. She was that character. And then when that funding fell through, we had the second reading for that. And she stayed with the project the entire time. She's on Jane the Virgin, which just ended a 5-year run. And just amazing woman, amazing actress. But there was someone I got from another actor. Oh, wow. That was Yvonne Cole. And so it's a combination. It's a combination of things. Sometimes I see a play, or if just watching TV, just paying attention. Like I've always said that the way for us to get through writers or directors and actors is to supersede the process. You know what I mean? If a show is relying on casting directors, well, who they're going to bring in, right? They have their own people they're going to bring in, and maybe to weed out everybody. There are all these systems to weed out people, but you may be weeding out a diamond in there. And my attitude is like, I want to see everybody, and is that time consuming? Yes, but that's how I found my actors.
So you've written scripts for film, and now you'd like to add television?
I'm looking to get into directing television.
Directing, okay.
Yeah, I really would like to. I have a pilot that I've written that I would like to get made. It's about the LA riots. It's an honest portrayal of the LA riots in Los Angeles, so it'd be very difficult to get done. But in the meantime, my focus over the last 3 years has been television. Just after you've done 7 feature films, I love it and I still would do it. But there's so many things. I've been more inspired by television right now than what's happening in cinema. So that's where my focus has been, And plus it's like that thing too, where when I was first starting out, I shot my first feature on an XL1, a Canon XL1. Nobody was doing that at that time. So I felt like, okay, cool, you're putting yourself in a class, right? Where you're not doing what everyone else is doing. And then after I made my first feature, I was like, well, no one's done a second. So my thing was to do a second. So my thing was always to put myself in a category where I didn't have any peers. And so now I'm in a place where everybody I know is making a movie because they can. That's a bad place for me to be. So I don't know a lot of people that are getting into directing television because it's very difficult. And even with the diversity talk, that again, like I talked about earlier, that's on the surface, but underneath, there's not much changing. So that's what I'm finding, because I don't have an agent. I'm reaching out directly to showrunners, and I'm reaching out for shows that I'm right for. And the good thing on that is I get people that will reach back. They may say no right now, but they're saying, keep in touch with, I love your reel, keep in touch. I can't believe you don't have an agent. I can't believe you're not directing TV already. I can't help you right now, but keep in touch. That's a win. That's a win. If I get a showrunner, if I reach out to a showrunner on social media and they send me back their email, that's a win. Even if I don't get the job, because maybe I'll get the job next year. We'll see. We'll see. We do an interview again and I'm directing some television. Let me put that back. Let me do that again. Yeah. Maybe we're here next year and I'm directing television. Who knows?
Do you still submit to film festivals?
I don't. No. Over the years, I've realized that all the film festivals I ever screened at were always through an invitation or through someone I know. I can't tell you that in the thousands of dollars I've spent submitting to film festivals, that there was one that I got in through a direct submission, just a blind submission. I can't tell you that there's one. They were always through people I knew, filmmakers I knew. Hey, send your movie over to this guy. They need your type of movie. And I just don't feel, there's so much content now, I just don't feel those are the places that people are looking anymore, even Sundance. Maybe more so, but That will always be a major film festival, but what I've, after Counterpunch had gotten into Netflix, got distribution through Lionsgate, and then was on Netflix for 2 years, there were films that went to Sundance the year that Counterpunch would have screened, because I did submit that film, and they were on Sundance for 6 months. So I stopped looking at it that way. I want my movies to be seen. I don't care about awards. Is that a bucket list thing as a filmmaker? Absolutely. I will say this though about Sundance. I've submitted 3 of my 7 there, and I would occasionally go to an event, not Sundance event, just a film event, and a programmer would come up to me. Hey, I saw La Guapa, man. I pushed it forward. I'm a Sundance programmer. I saw Counterpunch, man. I loved it. I pushed it forward. It made me feel good just to know that the films I did submit to Sundance did get seen. And even though they got passed on, because I think a lot of people are like, are they even watching all these films? I can tell you that they are, because I don't know who the programmers are. They have to come and introduce themselves to me and say, I saw your film and I loved it and I pushed it forward. I'm sorry I didn't get in. That's enough for me. I'm like, cool, I'm just glad someone watched it over there. But no, I don't. I think film festivals now are just for ego. Again, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in that. If someone genuinely likes my film and wants to show it, absolutely. And I have a couple of favorites. And I'll be surprised. Like, I got invited to the Chicanindi Film Festival in Denver, Colorado. I didn't know they were even paying attention to my stuff. And they said, hey, we see you made all these films, or Chicano Film Festival, they flew me out. They were so nice to me. And that was cool. It was unexpected, and then other film festivals you go to and you just feel like, I don't know, it's like the films are secondary. It's about the event, or there's one movie that's really big and we're all like the kind of satellites around this giant moon of a film, and they all get lost. But I've never had a screening at a film festival that was bigger than screenings I put on myself.
And so people that you've grown up with that have come to see your films, have you screened them in Wilmington or around that area?
No, well, I did do a screening in the South Bay at the Rolling Hills 20 for my 6th film. It has 2 titles. There's a Spanish language title, La Guapa, and then there's Thou Shalt Not Kill. And I did that one there, and that was cool because that was a movie theater I used to go to as a kid and sneak into and see R-rated movies at. So the screen there was pretty cool. And there were some people that were there from when I'd grown up, people that were paying attention that I didn't know were paying attention. So that was the only time. I would love to screen in Wilmington, but we don't have and I did at the Warner Grand in San Pedro. I screened there, and I used to see movies there as well. So those were pretty cool, but they were very small screenings, like Warner Grand is this giant Art Deco theater, and I think there were maybe 50 people there. But when I did my initial Counterpunch screening, we did 2 screenings in one night, 150 people, each screening. So the film festival does their best to try to promote everybody, but it's really essentially up to you, and I just find it easier that if I'm having a screening, it's easy for me to promote it myself and rally people to go see it, as opposed to going to a film festival screening. I don't know why, because I have to use their website, and sometimes it's confusing. They got to find the film or find the link, or whatever it is. But I don't waste my time collecting laurels on my posters. I just don't.
Do you have tips on writing dialogue where it doesn't sound forced, or even omitting dialogue?
I think the only way to do that is to watch movies and read scripts with good dialogue. Have good conversations. That's a tough one. I don't know. You just know when it's not right. For me, like some of the masters, like a Tarantino, like they approach it like a novel, I think, more like a book. I think a lot of it has to do with what's not said. If you have a clear understanding of the relationships between the characters, the dialogue comes off more naturally in between those two. So I think you have to start there. If you know your characters, they start to talk to each other on their own in a weird way. That's never been an issue for me. Like, my issue is I write too much dialogue. Like, my first film was like, they just said, look, man, this is a 10-page scene and they're just talking. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to cut it because I love everything they're saying. And I'm like, that's what they say. He's like, well, we can cut it now, we can cut it in the editing room. And I thought, well, let's just do that. We can cut it in the editing room if it's not working. But it was a challenge, for my actors to do a 6-page scene, and 6 pages of dialogue, because I'm someone that likes to keep the camera on them and have them go through it. I'm not going to break it up. I want them to be emotionally connected. And my stuff has a rhythm to it. So if they're not on that train, they're going to have a hard time, But my dialogue is what attracted a lot of actors to it. They always, you don't ever hear an actor say, when they say the writing's so good, they didn't have to work as hard. That means they didn't have to sell it. They just had to speak it. If you ever read Titanic, the script of Titanic is really bad. It's like if you read it, and that was the only thing that didn't get nominated for an Academy Award, ironically, was the script. But when you read it, the story is there and the relationships are there. I'm just talking about the dialogue. But Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet are so skilled that when they say the lines, you just believe it. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm the only one that said that about Titanic's script. And I'm not talking story structure. I'm not talking about anything. I'm just talking about the dialogue of that, But if you have good enough actors, it doesn't matter. Like they can sell it. That's what they get paid for, right? But whenever I hear an actor say, yeah, I didn't have to work as hard on this one, that means that it was right there, And with my dialogue, they have to pick it up fast because I'm shooting a feature in 3 weeks, So you have a maximum of 5 takes, Yeah.
Is that what you meant by a rhythm? Because okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if I have if I have more than one camera, on a couple occasions I did, then it's great. Then I have this thing going back in this tennis match going back and forth between the characters. But in terms of tips, that's a tough one. I think just know who your characters are before you start your screenplay. And it's weird, but they start talking to each other. It's very strange, but that's been my experience. It's like, wait a minute, how the hell? And I'm shocked by it every time I write a script. So that's the first thing. It's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And then you just start getting into a flow, and it just takes practice, right? The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, But don't give away plot in your dialogue. We don't talk like that, right? We don't talk about plot in life, So that should be a first sign that the dialogue's bad.
Have you had actors on set and you realize that it's way more effective for them to say nothing and you decide in the moment to take it out?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because I come from silent movies. I also did a short film series called The Misadventures of Cholo Chaplin, and they were silent short films, black and white silent short films, where there was no dialogue. And in my 7th feature film, there was very little dialogue. It was all the actor. So there was a lot of, that's sort of my background is now to give less and tell more between the characters through action and emotion and less through dialogue. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now. And not be so in love with my words that, well, can we show that without them saying anything or saying a lot less? Yes. Always cut the fat, cut as much as you can. The simpler it is, the fuller it can be in a weird way.
Do you see that from being a beginning filmmaker all the way until now, that really a lot of it was about cutting the fat in some sense?
Yes, because my process started, when I first wrote my first screenplay, that I didn't have notes or anything. I just had an idea, right? And so I would just start. And then at the end of that process, you just have this really fatty piece of meat. And then you realize, I don't need this, I don't need that, I don't need this. Or you repeat yourself. Now I'm a more disciplined writer in the sense that I'll write a treatment first. So I don't have as much fat once my script is done because I already know what I'm not going to use because I've already done notes, I've done a treatment for it, and now I'm going to script form. And that's only been the last 2 or 3 scripts that I've written, So I'm constantly learning because I didn't start from some place of filmmaking,
When you're starting a story, are you starting with an outline?
I didn't always do that. I actually learned how to do that recently. One of the best creative decisions I've ever made was joining a writing group. I was in a bubble for a very long time. But it's also hard to find a writing group where everyone knows how to give notes and knows how to take notes. And so I was very lucky because what we have is very unique, and the people within that writing group understand that too. And I've gotten jobs out of this writing group. We're all kind of looking out for each other. There's only 8 of us, but I was a type that would just turn in pages and say, okay, this is what and they're like, well, we don't know where the story's going. Can you just outline it for us? And I'm like, no, I don't outline. Just follow this. Give me the notes on the pages. Like, yeah, well, we can't give you notes if we don't know where the story's going. And so then I had to think about how do I do that? And I started writing, learning how to write treatment, and that was great. First practice in terms of just writing a treatment makes it very easy for you to pitch your script. So there's that skill. And then outlining it, when I would get lost, normally when I'm writing a script, right, I'm just going and I get to a point and I don't know where the story is going to go from there. That's normally how I would write. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it, but that's how I would do it. And then something would strike me, or I would know, okay, well over here, I know this is going to happen, so let me just start there. So these huge gaps in my scripts, and then I would connect those gaps. Well, now I outline my entire script, my entire story. First, I'll take those from notes. So I'll have a notebook with me everywhere I go. So it doesn't matter where I'm at, an idea will come and I'll write it down. And I'm starting to get into recording, but I'm very old school. So I start just writing down, and a page of notes in my little notebook will be about 10 pages of script. So I'll usually then, on my writing day, will translate that to those 10 pages. But now, that was the old way. Now I will outline everything. So I'll outline the entire story, and I'm able to write my scripts a lot faster because of that. Because I already know where the story is going to go, the dialogue, the characters are fleshed out, and the dialogue comes a lot easier and a lot faster. So I definitely recommend that, but you have to learn how to outline, you have to learn how to write a treatment, you have to learn how to convert your notes to those things. Me, I just started writing scripts because that's what I understood the script, right? And started writing there, but that was a very stop-start kind of way. I like to, now it's just like a fluid, like playing a piano. Once the outline's done and I start the screenplay, it's like playing a piano for me.
What did the writing group teach you about giving notes?
Not to give notes in the sense that this is how I would do it. You're giving notes in terms of what's missing, what's not being communicated. Is this your intention here? Because this is what I'm getting from it. You're never coming from a place of ego either. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get hurt by the notes, or you feel like sometimes someone gives a bad note. That happens too. But with this particular group, we've established ourselves enough where we do hurt each other on occasion, but we can recover, and move on. Just recently, like I'm doing this screenplay and they're like, all of them were in agreement, like kill the first act of this. Like you don't need it. And I was just so against that. I'm like, no, I'm not killing that act. And then I turned in the outline. And so when I started the script, I said, I appreciate all you guys' notes, but I didn't take that one. And so the first 10 pages are this act you told me to kill. And then 2/3 of them were like, oh, okay, I get it. Because sometimes it's not always on the outline either. Sometimes it's in the screenplay, and they were judging the outline. They're like, okay, now I see what you're saying now. Because when I send them the script, they're like, yeah, this is engaging, I'm going to treat it. I totally get it now. But that was also me sticking to my gut. But normally when everybody in the room is against something, that's when I know that it's special. Francis Ford Coppola said, the things that they want to fire you for when you're a young filmmaker are the things that they give you awards for when you're older. And that's in the back of my mind. So when they were all in agreement, if they were like half liked it, half didn't like it, I would have been more conflicted about whether or not to keep it. But when all of them were like, no, you don't need that, I'm like, no, we're going forward with this. I'm trusting my gut. You guys are wrong on this one. And I proved some of them wrong on that next, when I presented the script.
What has this writing group taught you about outlining?
It's like a combination of being concise and being as detailed as you possibly can. Sometimes I don't have the patience for that because I know I'm going for a feeling, right? So I'll start writing out a scene that doesn't necessarily feed the outline. That's going to be in the script. So I just need to say, on a beach somewhere, whatever, the two characters have a conversation. So some of them are very good and very detail oriented with their outlines, and will continue to do that until they get to the script. Me, since I'm the director, like there's only 3 directors in our group. They're director writers. So for the writers in the group, their outlines are going to be far more detailed. And I have to remind them sometimes, I'm a director. No one's going to direct this script except me. So I don't need to write all that out for myself. And I don't necessarily need to write all that out for an investor. I need them to get the gist of the story. And then hopefully that's enough. I need them to be interested enough to read the screenplay. So I would be more detailed for things I'm not going to shoot. That maybe, but most of the things that I write, I know I'm going to shoot them. So I don't necessarily have to be that. For the group to know where I'm going and who the characters are, what the log line is, what the pitch is, that's what I present. And then all of the great nuances that I want to put into it go into the screenplay.
So if someone said, I love what you've written, and I hate to use the A word, they say it's authentic, but are you willing to then turn it over to them and not be the director? What if they say, sorry, we've already kind of like filled some roles here, but we love the script, we love the story, the voice is original?
Right. I don't know. I've never been in that situation. It depends on how attached I am to the script, but every screenplay I've ever written, I've had a personal attachment to. I've never not written anything that wasn't personal or I had an attachment to it. I've never written something just for fun or just because I thought this would be cool. Like everything that I've written has been personal, everything. So I don't see myself, that's why I don't think I could ever be in a writer's room. You know, I just don't know I don't know that I would want to put myself into someone else's characters on a daily basis. I think that's work. And I'm sure it's great work, but that's not necessarily for me. I need to dictate the story and I need to dictate the characters.
Do you think it's because they mean so much to you, these characters? That you're not just writing just like this
No.
weak character, they mean a lot to you?
Yeah, they don't. If I'm spending time with them, then it's not that they mean so much. They do mean something, but I'm protective of them and I'm selfish with them.
But it sounds like because you're protective.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm invested with the actor because they're communicating that character, you know, and then now they're invested in it. Now they're going to protect this story. They're going to protect the character, you know, and that's exciting. That's when I share. Is when we're on day one of set. Now I start sharing, you know, the story and the screenplay and the characters with everybody. And hopefully the audience responds.
Right. So it's almost, they're like real people and it's like you don't want to let them go.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely look at them that way. Absolutely.
Did you ever feel there were limitations with using one of the most expensive cameras you've used for your sets, where when you use something that might have been cheaper, you felt like you focused more on the storytelling?
What do you mean?
Well, you know how people always use, I don't have access to this budget, so
Right.
I can't get this camera, so I can't do the film. But then sometimes that actually makes you come up with a better story.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my last film that I shot, and what I would tell people, I'm like, again, I'm not a film student, but I know that it's the lenses. It's not necessarily the camera, it's the lenses you choose. You know, so, you know, I've shot on reds. 3 of my films were shot on a red. I knew for Marigold I wasn't gonna be able to shoot on a red, but that kind of helped us because we shot on a DSLR. Now, I shot on DSLR, but I shot it with Zeiss Prime lenses. So that gave us access to the whole city. You know, I did have a permit because I was gonna shoot in the LA River, and I wasn't going, you know, I had a makeup artist, I had all kinds of, I was not going to risk us being kicked out of the LA River. So I did get a permit for that, but we went to Grand Union Station, we had a camera, we shot on a train. You know, you could do so much more with a DSLR, but And I love the way that film looked because of the lenses we chose and just the way the days panned out. It was very I wanted to be very colorful, and we always seemed to get a day. We were always shooting after a rain, you know, so there was like the clouds and the sky was super blue and the air was clear. But shooting that particular film gave me mobility and flexibility because one of my characters was schizophrenic and he had no dialogue. I didn't know what he was going to do. So I would just give him a scenario and say, this is what I need to end up happening. And then I would be right there with my DP and he's shooting it. And then, you know, he had to be very skilled because he has to keep things in focus and composed because I wanted the shot to be interesting. And then if something got messed up, it was just a simple thing of, okay, do that again, Ivan, but do it this way and stay right here. Don't move out so we can keep you in focus. Okay. And then we shoot it. So it was just such a very great fluid way of shooting that particular film. And it was fun. It was fun to shoot because we just go. And we were just using natural light everywhere. And that could be a hit or miss. If you don't have a good DP, if you don't have a good colorist, which I have an amazing colorist, I knew that was gonna look great with once we had all the pieces put together. So that was definitely one of those instances. You know, it's not the camera, it's who's behind the camera. That's the biggest lesson. But, you know, people want, you know, I during that process, I kind of got it because it didn't feel like I was making a movie. You know, I wanted the big camera and the lights and everything. And it's a crew of 5 and I'm over my DP's shoulder, you know, giving him direction. But then when I looked at the images and the footage, it was big. And it was alive and it was emotional. So it just doesn't matter all the other stuff, right? That's for your ego. And during the time of that process, when I was kind of asking myself, you know, wow, is this really a movie now or not? And there's a great shot I saw, and it's of Chivo with Alejandro Inarritu, and they're in the forest, you know, for Revenant. And there's Chivo with a camera, digital camera, this big, and Leonardo DiCaprio's right there. And Alejandro's over his shoulder. This is almost the exact same thing as my, you know, that picture I just painted of me over my DPs. And that's not just real. Of course, they have a ton of more money and every resource and everything else, but that's essentially what it is, you know. And if your story is strong enough, it goes beyond the technology. And that's the best advice I could give to any filmmaker is don't get wrapped up in that. If you have a strong story and you're able to execute that story, it'll go beyond the technology, you know, because essentially the audience doesn't care what you shot on. They don't care, you know. Is it your movie for cinephiles or is it for me, it's for the person who wants an escape, who worked a hard day and wants an escape, or they want to feel something. They want some truth. Yeah, I mean, that's what propels me.
Do you think about the flaw in your protagonist while you're writing the story?
No, if I'm writing them, they already have flaws. No, I don't think about that. I just try to if I make them human, they already have them. I don't try to accentuate. I don't try to manipulate. I don't try to impose a flaw. If I'm making a human character, they already have flaws. That's what makes them genuine. That's what makes them authentic. I don't need to add a flaw to them. If I'm adding a flaw to them, then I think that's why the Superman character is such a hard character to grasp, because he's so good and he's invulnerable. That's not interesting. You know what I mean? He can fly, which is cool, but how do you make that character vulnerable? How do you make him have flaws? You know, he has to be a bad guy, and he's never going to be a bad guy. He's Superman. He has to have some type of, that's a lot of weight on somebody to have that, right? I don't know if that's been explored, but I don't know that you can explore that with that character. I don't think the audience would accept it, you know? So in terms of creating flaws for my characters, they already have them, yeah.
It's interesting because we want to see actors on screen portray that, but then we want to believe that these public figures don't have flaws.
Yeah, it becomes a hero worship, you know, the people that we believe in, it becomes a hero worship. That's where that's where celebrity, or let's say famous people, it's like, I'm just like you. Yeah, that's a true statement. I am just like you. It's what we put on them because they're on a big screen, or they're in TV or politics or whatever. It's our perception of them. That's why I don't get starstruck, because I judge a person by what's right in front of me. I don't go by the facade and everything else. So I don't get starstruck. The only time I did get starstruck was when I got to meet my hero, Muhammad Ali.
Oh,
but that's Muhammad Ali, so and he is flawless. In my opinion, he's a legend. I met a legend, a living legend. So he's the only one, but I don't get starstruck other than that. I just don't.
Did you say anything to him?
Yes, I did. I got to tell him what he meant to me my entire life, and how he inspired me to sometimes say things and do things that not everybody's gonna like. But if it's your truth, that you have to say it, and you have to do it. Not everyone's gonna. A lot of people don't realize that Muhammad Ali was not liked for the very beginning of his career. He was not liked. I mean, it's hard for people to imagine that, but I know the man's story, and he had it very hard, and to keep his poise and everything that he did. That's why I just don't care what people think.
What did he say when you said that to him?
I can't tell you that.
Okay, all right, darn, all right. Do I have to read it in the book? Will it be in the
No,
book?
I don't even put that in the book. That's saved for me.
Okay, no, but that shows that meant a lot to you.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You're not about like a cheap story where you want to tell everyone it was special.
I think I shared it with my wife, but I tell people that story of how I got to meet him and the whole night and everything, and but I don't tell them everything.
That's fair.
Okay.
I know we touched on some of this previously. I'm wondering if you could just go back to the hardest year for you as a filmmaker and why, and then the easiest year for you as a filmmaker, and what was the outcome of your thought after experiencing both years?
Wow, those were back to back. The worst year and my best year were back to back, and try to give you the cliff notes, but like 2010, like I mentioned earlier, started with my son getting in an accident. I was getting ready to get ready to shoot my third film. And on the day after his accident, I literally had sent my script to my producer that morning, the morning my son was injured. So my assistant director was already scheduling things and getting things, starting our prep. And I was supposed to shoot that in February. So, they were calling me, she was calling me, and people were calling me. I wasn't answering my phone. Obviously, my son was my number one priority. And when I got on, they're like, "Where the hell are you? We got the script. We have questions about this, that, and the other." And I called him. I said, "My son was in an accident. He's in ICU, and I just don't have any answers for you. You have my script. You paid me for it. If you guys got to stay with that schedule, just do whatever you want with it. Get another director. I don't care." And my producer at the time knew my family, so he was just like, "Don't worry about anything. We're ready when you are." And they had a deal with Blockbuster, so they had to get movies out at certain times. He's like, "We'll figure it out." He's like, "Just don't worry about the movie. Take care of your family, and just keep us posted on how Julian's doing." And that just made me feel good from a producer to say me that, because I wouldn't have faulted them if he had just said, "You know what, we're gonna have to hire another director because we have a schedule, but of course, stay with your son." So it wasn't until like 3 weeks after that accident, and then he got home, that my wife said, "Go make your movie, he's fine." And I said, "I didn't want to go anywhere, really. I just wanted to be with my son." She's like, you love this script, you put your heart in it. He's fine, he's totally fine, and go make your movie. So I called my producer. I said, let's get started on pre-production. He's like, "We're already there." I go, "Did you hire a director?" He's like, "Nope, we know you're coming back." I said, "All right." So I went and shot my third film, and I edited in Mexico City. When I got back, I got told that, and this is the bad year, so I got told by an actor I was working with that he's got his life story produced. He's a bipolar Golden Gloves boxer who was an actor, and he got the money from these two brothers that wanted to produce this film. And then when I had gotten back from Mexico, I was told by my producer, "We have the money to do your fourth." So I was like, "Great, there I'll get started." So I started not bartending as much because I was working so heavily on 2 scripts at the same time. which I don't necessarily suggest, but they were. What was great about that is when I would submit an idea for one of the scripts and it would come back from the producers and they didn't like the scene, I would take that scene and put it for my other script. So I was able to mix and match them a little bit. That was a great time. But then at the end of that process, like I was ready. I was like, okay, good, let's go. I was wanting to quit my job. I wanted the financing for both these to go through. And then there was some skepticism, and then Blockbuster went out of business, and that just killed the budget for the fourth film. So I was like, okay, I still have Counterpunch. And then those two punks, that were producers, decided that they were going to use my connections to do their thing, and they didn't want to produce our thing anymore. They were going to do their own thing, and they ended up doing some stereotypical, really crappy horror thing that they did. So I was just like left holding this bag, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm like 2 months behind on our mortgage, and I'm like, I've got to get back to work. So I just threw those both, in a bin, and I was at work, and I was just like picking up shifts left and right. I was working 5-6 shifts a week, and I just was not making enough money because it was the economy turnaround at that time. And I just couldn't catch up. I couldn't catch up, man. And I just, by the time December rolled around, I was ready to premiere my third feature film. And it was very ironic because it was at Raleigh Studios, and it was probably the week before that. It's very strange when you're doing your dream, but your life is kind of going south, right? But this is it's this weird tug of war. And I just remember after telling my wife, look, I fucked up. We're losing the house. We're going to have to move. I don't know how aggressive they are going to be at coming to take the house. My biggest fear was coming home and there being a lock, and picking up my kids and there being a lock on our front door and we can't get into our house. I go, so we're going to have to move right after this shoot, right after the screening. And she was so gracious about it. And I remember sitting outside going, I'm screening my third feature film next week and I'm losing my house. How did I even fucking get here? And I remember going to Raleigh Studios to test out. I was basically at that point thinking I'm gonna stop. After the third one, I'm gonna stop. I've given up so much and sacrificed so much. After this third one, I'm done. And I remember going to Raleigh Studios and I was gonna do a test of my hard drive because the movie was on the hard drive. And the projectionist was there, and these guys, they do this is their job. They've seen a million filmmakers come in and they could care less. He just wants to get in and out. We're gonna do a test. I'm gonna go every 10 minutes to see if it's okay. I'm like, okay, cool. I just have a concern about the first 10 minutes here and then we'll jump. And he's like, all right, so go ahead and sit down. You can call me. So I'm sitting in this Raleigh Studios screening, watching my movie up there, and I'm like this. First time I'm seeing it on the big screen. I've edited a million times on the small screen. But it was just so big, and the nuance and the performances, and it was there, and I'm just like watching it going, wow. I'm like watching it for the first time by myself in Raleigh Studios. And before I knew it, I'm like 2/3 the way through, and I haven't heard from the projectionist. And I'm like, oh shit, I only have like a half hour to really be there. I only have a half hour time to test my movie. So I turn around and he's like 4 rows behind me watching the movie. and I go like this to him, and he's like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. He's watching my movie. He got into my movie. And I just was like, it was just a great moment in such a dark time for me. And I remember going to him and we watched the whole thing. So me and him watched the whole thing. He's like, man, I loved it. He's like, I see so much crap come in here, man. He's like, what was your budget on that? And I told him, and he's like, no way. He's all, I'm gonna keep my eye on you. And I go, thanks so much, man. And then, we had the screening. It was a great screening, and it got distribution. And but again, it wasn't enough money. By that time, I was already gotten another apartment, and we were moving out. So 2010 ended with us losing our house and moving, and having movies out. I was still doing shorts. I was still writing. I was still doing all those things. So then, when we moved out, I was pretty much done with filmmaking. I basically said, this is too much of a sacrifice that I put on my family. If it was just me, who cares, right? But yeah, that was a tough conversation with my wife and kids. And
2010, sorry to interrupt. 2010, okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So we get to 2011, and it wasn't dire. We weren't homeless, I had three, it was actually a really good lesson in negotiation, particularly if I come against producers or distributors again. But I had 3 real estate agents that were like hawks, like rats, trying to get our house. And so I emailed them individually saying, I have 5 other real estate agents that are offering me this amount of money to move out in 3 weeks. Whichever one of you comes with the highest number is the one that's going to get this house. Because I had to sign off on giving it to them. And so I got a good chunk of money to have a little bit of a nest egg, even though I was broke, my credit was shot, everything was shot, get us into a nice apartment and then start over.
Sorry, just real quick, how did they know that they must have checked the bank records?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
It's a whole racket, man. It's a whole racket. The banks were never going to, no intention of helping people stay in their homes, because it would have been very easy to do. So it's like January, February of 2011 now, and I'm done. My family's safe. We're in a nice place. I'm on a balcony. I'm reading a book. My producer calls. I'm like, oh, what does he want? Hey, what's up? Hey, man, 4th feature is on. We got some money. We're going to go forward. I go, no, I'm not doing it. And he's like, what do you mean you're not doing it? He's like, we love your script. We're going to go forward and shoot Mexico. I said, no, I'm not doing it. He's like, well, I go, what's the budget? And the budget was just ridiculously low. I go, my film can't be shot for that. He's like, we'll make it happen, man. They were looking out for their company. They wanted to stay relevant. I go, let me write something else that's smaller. No, we can make it. We can do it. And I said, all right, let's do it. And so then it was just hard to cast because the budget was so low. But I felt like, okay, here's my second shot, right? I didn't have to worry about money at this point. We had money in the bank. We were safe. I'm gonna go make another movie. I thought my career was done. That was a bad motivation to go make that movie because I pulled in some really great cast and I just didn't do right by them in that film. Even though I loved the process of it, it was still compromising too much for the budget. But we did it, and at the end of that, I was in Mexico on our last 2 nights of shooting, and the producer for the Counterpunch project calls me, says, where are you? I said, I'm in Mexico. He's like, I got the funding for Counterpunch now. You need to come and interview with these producers because they're interviewing directors from CAA and William Morris and all the big agencies. And I'm like, no, that's my movie, man. I wrote it. They're like, they're going to pay you for the script, but they don't want you to direct it. I'm like, that's bullshit. And he says, well, when can you get here? I go, I wrap in 2 days. I'll be there in 2 days. And I go, set up a meeting for Monday. I get back on Sunday. He's like, okay. So I tell my editor who was with me on set at the time, because he was cutting the movie as I was shooting. That was my normal process. I love to do that. Haven't had the luxury of doing that. So I said, I told my editor, okay, stop what you're doing. He's like, what? I go, stop editing. I need you to cut me a trailer. He's like, why? I go, because our next gig is going to be based on how good that trailer is. He's all serious? I said, yeah. I go, you're coming with me on that one. I go, but I need you to cut it and you have 24 hours. He's like, oh, okay. So he's like cutting the trailer and he's not working on the movie. So my producer on that film is telling me, why isn't the editor working on the movie? He's working on a trailer already. I go, well, I would like the cast to see what, how the thing's coming together and so they feel good about what we're doing. And he's like, yeah, but we're losing time and money. And I said, yeah, I know, but just let us, he's almost done. Just let him finish the trailer. And then he'll get back to editing. So, okay, cool. So he spends like 2 days on this trailer and my producer's pissed. And we get into the room and he's like, I need to have a meeting with you. I go, okay, just a second. I bring the whole cast in. We're like, we own this, we're in this hotel and bring all the whole cast and crew in there. I go, Steven, play the trailer. Plays the trailer and everyone just loses it. The trailer just nails everything I'm trying to do with this movie. And my producer's very happy. So he's like, okay, no worries. So I get back on Monday, I have that trailer with me, and the producer, she's Hungarian, very tough. She's a dear friend of mine now. She's a very tough Hungarian woman, and I'm sitting in front of her. She's like, so why am I meeting with you? You're not with CAA, you're not with William Morris, you're not with this, you're not with that. Why am I even talking to you? We're gonna pay you as a writer. Why do you think you should direct this? And I said, well, I just shot this film I got back from. I'd love for you to see the trailer of it. what do you mean you just shot it? I go, I just wrapped yesterday. She's like, yesterday's Sunday? I said, yes. And you have a trailer already? I said, yes. Let me see. So I turn around. She's watching the trailer and she like folds my laptop down. She looks at me, she's like, okay. I go, thank you, appreciate your time. I got up and left. And she had another partner actually, and then she called me and said, I need to speak to my partner first. I said, sure, no problem. It was like a 5-minute conversation after that, and I got that gig. So I got that right after I got back from, so I was in post-production on my 4th and in pre-production on my 5th. And that was my best year, man. It was just movie making nonstop. And yeah, it was great. And the 5th one, they both got distribution. The 5th one got picked up by Lionsgate and was on Netflix. It's actually, I just got word that it's making its China debut. This movie came out 5 years ago. It's making its China debut in October and its UK debut just last month. So that movie has still got legs. It's a boxing film, it's a genre film. So those films kind of, they can go a little bit, they go longer. They have a long shelf life. So that was my worst and best years back to back. And those two in themselves would be a book, but I managed to keep them to 2 chapters. So 2 very long chapters, but.
What was your takeaway of all that? Like just from having those back to back?
I didn't have time to think about anything. You know, I just didn't have time to think about it. I just felt like I've been through the worst of it and I got 2 more opportunities to do something. And then of course, after Counterpunch, we screened Counterpunch, and my producers from the 4th were like, now we got something. Do you have something for your 6th? I said, yes. And then shot that one in March of 2012, you know. So it's all started kind of, those relationships started because I was building something with them. At least I thought I was building something with them, which was a troupe of actors and everything else. And then it just started to rot from the inside out. And I had to walk away from all of that, everything I had built, because people had cheapened the entire thing for their own gain and for their own narcissism. And so since then, you know, when I started over, that's when I started Marigold. And Marigold was like, I'm gonna do something that nobody can copy. But some people tried to copy that as well. So, but that movie hasn't, I haven't put that one out there as much because I don't need to. I'm gonna wait until I can put it somewhere where people will see it. I'm in no hurry. I've got other things I'm writing. I have 6 films out there. I have an incredible reel. I don't need to just put it out there just to put it out there. I love it too much to just stream it on Amazon for, you know, anybody can do that. That's not distribution. You know, I want it on Netflix. That's where I want it. I'm not even looking at a theatrical. I'm looking at just Netflix, you know. So I'm gonna hang on to it.
When did you start writing it?
Which one?
Marigold.
I didn't write anything. It's completely unscripted.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that one I would say is an outline. I would come up with scenarios and characters, and I would communicate those things to the actors, but they didn't have a script.
It's improv. Okay.
Yeah. So I prefer unscripted only because it sounds like there wasn't a plan. There was a plan and there was a vision. We just weren't confined to dialogue. And it was really a tenuous job for my editor. And she was a new editor that I found, and I love her to death because she found the story and she crafted the story and she stayed with me with that movie for a good 2 years. And now she's working on bigger and better things. So I'm real excited for her as well. So I'm a training ground for people who are gonna move on to bigger and better things. One thing in my book, I said, you know, one thing I kept reading from industry insiders, and it bothers me every time, is there are 3 things to success, and that's be kind, be humble, and help other people succeed. If you do those 3 things, you're gonna succeed in our business. And I just think that's such bullshit. Because I'm like, if those are the 3 things, that's what you use to get into the business, then your journey wasn't very difficult. I go, because my experience has taught me that when I've been kind, I get taken advantage of.
True.
When I'm humble, people don't take me seriously as a filmmaker. Yeah. And when I try to help other people, they end up just using you as a stepping stone.
Very true.
I'm not saying those are 3 things you should be in life, but in this business, if you're starting from nothing, you're gonna have a very hard time in this business. But these are all people that are kind of had a foot in the door, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That say these things. And when you already have a foot in the door, well, those things will be valuable to you because maybe everyone's used to dealing with an asshole, but you're already somebody, you know. And it's an agent blog that I follow, but I called him out on that. He didn't respond, but I was just kind of like, I go, your last name is a famous last name. You're the son of a famous agent. So you already have a door open to you. So
Yeah.
being those three things, maybe that disarms people and they go, oh yeah, okay. But when you're successful already, absolutely that works because everyone goes, oh wow, they're so kind, they're so humble, and they're helping other people. But you're already successful. It's easy, you're not gonna lose anything by being that. You know, and especially if most people are used to assholes in those positions. But yeah, I'm going off.
Yeah, that's fine. But I do agree with you. I think in life those are good rules.
Great rules.
I think in this business, if you're gonna help somebody, you do it because you want to do it. But yeah, there's not. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother workshop.
And I think that people that would disagree and say that's being too negative, I think a lot of them probably haven't been through a lot.
They're naive in a negative way in terms of the business.
Right. If you want to do the right thing and you want to keep your word, I think that's great. What about in search of fairness in this business and thinking that everyone's going to play that way?
Well, I would say this, like, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're a writer, an actor, director, there is the discipline and the craft of doing those things and learning those things and constantly learning. But it's also looking and learning and paying attention to this as a business. Not in a sense that it will get you jaded, but to give you some type, don't go in naive. You know, it is a business. That's number one. You know, I've gotten into major discussions with distributors over my posters because they weren't artistic enough and I wanted an artistic poster, but they just want to put Danny Trejo on the cover because that's what's going to sell. And that's what they do, right? So I have to kind of let them do what they do. They let me do what I do, which was make the movie. But there is no fairness in this business. There isn't. And if you understand that going in, then you can, I think, deal with it a lot better. But if you go in thinking something's going to make sense, or your journey is going to make sense, or it's going to be fair, or the outcome's going to be fair, you're going to have a very difficult time because there's nothing fair. You know, I know actors that have come out here and have been at it for 40 years and have never been a series regular. I have actors that have come out here, been out here 10 years and are series regulars. Is that fair? No, but that's just the nature of the business. It attracts a lot of different people from all over the world that all have something to say. And that can actually be an empowering thing because to me, there's no one way to get in. If you took a panel of 5 filmmakers, they would each, let's say 5 very successful filmmakers, each of them would have a different way of how they got in. I don't think there are two stories that are the same of how people succeed in this business. You just have to find what your story is and commit to your journey and try not to make it like anybody else. But go in there with the understanding of how the business works to the best of your ability. And unfortunately, a lot of that experience comes through failure. And so you have to look at it that. You know, I always say, you know, the more no's I get, it gets me closer to a yes. That's a pretty true statement. You know, there are some emails I've sent out that were not worded right when I reached out to a showrunner and it got back to me. And I'm like, you know what, I probably could have worded that better. But that's a learning thing. I didn't look at it as a negative. I looked at it as, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't have asked for that, or maybe I shouldn't have worded it that way, or maybe I shouldn't have reached out directly to that person. But I don't know that there's any, short of just being a complete douchebag in this business, I don't know that there are any little mistakes that you're gonna make that are gonna be so detrimental to your career. I've made a ton. It hasn't kept me from producing, writing, and directing because it's so democratized now. You can shoot one on your phone. And you can learn how to shoot one on your phone. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you don't know how, you can look it up. How do I make a movie? How do I make a short film? So you gotta be constantly reading and researching and you gotta love it, even the warts, you know? Because if you don't, it'll just eat you. It'll eat you. I've seen it happen to people and it's not to good people because they were so eaten alive at the fact that it's not fair. This isn't fair. I did all this work and I sacrificed so much. This isn't fair. Why did their movie get here and mine didn't?
So if someone's in that loop, it's late at night, it's early morning, they're waking up, they're like, you know what, this isn't fair, but if I stop, I don't get to do X, Y, or Z, and I may not get a laurel, and I may not get this publication to pick me as their new top 25 for the year,
Right.
but
yeah, it's funny you read it because I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy that got in a top 25 list. I'm not the guy that's, the film festival guy, but I am the guy that's written and directed several feature films. That's the guy I want to be, So those are goals and interesting goals. But if you have a short film and you're going all over the world, like, a friend of mine is a filmmaker who went to film school, had an award-winning short, and decided he wanted to go to AFI because he thought he would make more connections that way. I go, you already know how to make a movie. Why are you going to go and spend $100,000 to go to AFI? Well, I'll make connections that way. And I'm like, that's no guarantee, man. Yeah, you'll meet some people, but don't you think everybody's going for that reason? And I go, just make something. I go, how much money did you spend going all over the world with your film? He said, well, we won a ton of awards. I go, yeah, but didn't get you the next project. I go, I would have taken all that money and made something with it. So it depends what your priority is. I think if you're ego-driven, maybe that's what drives you. I don't know. I'm just not that person. I'm driven by storytelling, pure and simple. I'm not a multi-hyphenate either. I say writer-director so people have some type of perspective in terms of what I do, but essentially I just see myself as a storyteller. And I'm using tools that I have at my disposal to tell the stories that I want to tell. And that's what drives me. None of the other stuff does. All the other stuff would be great. My very simple goal is just to make a living as a writer-director. That doesn't necessarily mean going to Sundance. It doesn't necessarily mean being rich and successful. It just means making a living as a writer-director. That's an attainable goal. Everything else, if that happens, that's all gravy. But an attainable goal for me is that. At your first time out, you're expecting, look around, pay attention. I'm looking at, the hardest thing with Marigold and Matador was I was making an undistributable film, and I knew it. It wasn't my first film, it was my 7th, and I knew it was undistributable. And having to keep going because the itch would not go away on telling this story was very difficult. Whereas if I had the naivety of a first-time filmmaker, would have plowed right through that, right? Because I'm making my first film, but I'm making my 7th, and I'm broke, and I'm going, why am I doing this? It's just something I have to do.
why was it undistributable?
For many reasons. I mean, just going from off my experience, it's about a single woman. There's a homeless character in it who's schizophrenic, and it's like a coming-of-age story of this young girl. It's an all-Latin cast. Takes place in LA, in what I call the real LA. No stars are in it. Camila Banus is in it. She's an amazing actress. She's on Days of Our Lives, but she's so good. She was so gracious to be a part of that project. That was my 2nd time working with her. I just didn't, knowing the experience I had and what distributors say, I just didn't feel like it was going to find a buyer. At least not right now. Maybe later down the line, they will be. We'll see. When Cuarón's movie came out, Roma, I thought it's very much shot in that vein, not to that, that brilliance, obviously, but there was a great movie about a story about a woman that wasn't a star and everything else, and it did pretty well, I think. So who knows? But again, I don't have the machine behind me, so I just have to sit and wait on that one.